Okay, so we've covered the preparation part, and we've covered, what to wear and how to communicate and how to prepare your message. But now, what about the actual being on camera? What does somebody have to know to be able to do that effectively?
There's so many different things to consider, and that's the real value in doing media trainings and working with someone. It's also the value in practicing, and in part, it is doing your research and preparing. One of the things that I think is the most important is that when you are delivering your message, you have a very congruent message. And with that, I mean, there are always constant nonverbal cues that are going out. So as we're sitting here talking, and we're really comfortable with one another because we've known one another for a long time, but there are constant messages that are going out, whether they are on a conscious or an unconscious level. And they're really centered around what you're talking about, so your verbal communication. And it's about how your voice actually sounds. And some of it is around, the visual distractions, what's going on. We talked a little bit about, someone dressing in a way that's not distracting to someone sitting at home. But there are all sorts of other things going on, like this is like a deadly chair to put someone in for an interview, so because they can swivel, and so then, that becomes a visual distraction for someone.
We actually discussed locking these down
Yeah.
so that people couldn't do that because
Yep.
we've had.
If you can with this chair, I would do that. Yours isn't a swivel chair.
Yeah.
And the reason I bring up, and I'll go in a little bit deeper about this, is that they have actually done studies about when you're in a conversation with someone, so whether it's in person, and this is important for in-person communication as well as on camera. So whether it's in person or you're being interviewed, they've done these studies where people are constantly sorting through these different levels of what do you believe or not believe in someone who's telling you. And does confidence show up? Does truth-telling show up? And those all relate to the words that you're saying, how you're using your voice, and also all of these body language, visual distractions that can come up. So the verbal and what you're saying, we talked about that, is really important. But the other aspect of that is that you really want to make sure you don't have these other distractions, that you practice and you get used to your speaking voice so that you're projecting and you're not speaking in a really soft way. Because if you're speaking in a soft way, it doesn't really speak to a lot of confidence. Where if you first know your subject and then you get used to using your voice and projecting in a strong way, that's projecting confidence, it's projecting certainty, and it's not for someone to listen to. It's like you don't want a really high-pitched voice. You want to bring your voice back into a natural resonance, so it's comfortable for someone to listen to. As well as we go into body language and some of the visuals that go around that. If you're doing this with your pen, or somebody has, where's my BlackBerry? My BlackBerry or my iPhone. If somebody's really distracted, that.
Or I tend to move, to bounce my leg. It's
Yeah.
hard in this chair, which is a good thing for me. But
It's the fidgeting. So you want to be conscious of the body language. And what's happening is if you can bring all of these into, and until you, and again, it comes back to working with someone who knows media training as well. You can practice in your own mirror, or maybe you can get a friend that you can practice with, but the value really comes also in looking at yourself on camera and, practicing and seeing, oh, I'm slumped in this chair, or gosh, my voice sounds, kind of,
you sit up here?
Yeah, exactly. Or, gee, I looked really nervous. I was holding onto my hands, like this.
Oh yeah, the crossing of the hands.
And if someone is interviewing you and you get into a really uncomfortable part of what you're talking about, or something you're not uncertain with, or you're just plain nervous, and you're doing this to someone, especially if you've shifted a conversation into an area that you're uncomfortable with, what happens oftentimes is someone gets, it's that body language that you just naturally do this because it's like you're bracing yourself. Oh gosh, I don't know, how am I going to answer this? Or I really didn't want to talk about this. When you do this, this is sending a nonverbal cue that you're nervous, or maybe there's something more going on around that. Well,
position.
but it's also something more going on, around, the question that was just asked, or maybe, I would always look at it if someone kind of shifted or their eyes looked away or something like that. I would always look at it as, is there something more to this? I'm going to ask another question around this. But the point that I'm trying to make is you really want to practice. You really want to learn who you are, what you look like on camera, so that you have an absolute seamless message, so that you're just, you're comfortable talking with someone, and that you can, you can be comfortable in your body and shrug your shoulders and use your hands a little bit. To where you're not really uncomfortable, where you're a really comfortable person and you're just having a conversation. I mentioned hands. That's another good visual cue, is that it is good to go ahead and use your hands, but you don't want to overuse your hands, and you don't want them down here.
Right, down at your sides.
Yeah, or
all the
you're
time.
really stiff. Or if you're using them, as I've worked with people around the world, we talked about this a little bit when you first called me, and we were just chatting about this on the phone. As I've coached people around the world, what I've noticed is with the Romance countries, France, Italy, Spain, South America, they're really good at talking with their body language and using hands, and sometimes it can go too much, and so you're getting them to calm it down a little bit. And then there are other countries like Britain or the United States or Germany where people are very focused and they're really about just getting the message across, and maybe their body language isn't as relaxed.
Right.
And to get them to use their hands a little bit more and in a more natural way. So it's finding, a balance between that so that there aren't distractions. Because if you have your voice and you have your body language and you have all of the visuals down to something that is very natural and very fine-tuned, then the person that you're talking to or the person who's at home listening to the interview, that's when they hear what it is you have to say. So it's a seamless message that you're working on, where for you, you might think, this is really about what I have to say. Well, it is, and that's really important, but you still have these other factors out here that you're trying to get into congruency with what it is you're saying, so they support what it is you say, and they don't distract.
Right. I often tell people who are doing video, video communicates on so many levels. There's the verbal and there's the visual, and oftentimes it's not even so much as it's, if you don't play it right, what you show can override what you're actually saying.
Exactly.
And that's a really important.
Right.
Important
and all of that kind of gets filtered through this conscious, unconscious level as you're talking to someone. They're not even aware that they're factoring in maybe what you're doing with your hands and you're talking. And they may not be factoring in, oh, I just asked a question and the hands suddenly went like this. But it's speaking to what it is you're saying. So it's a filter that everything is going through when the bottom line is you want them to hear your message. So the value in practicing is that you are getting all of these other layers of your voice and the body language, fine-tuned so that they can hear what it is you have to say. Have you ever, an example I often use, have you ever been in a foreign country or in a different city and you can't figure out where you're going and you've got the map and you're trying to figure it out, so you stop and you ask someone, how do I get to Disneyland from here? Where's the entrance to the park? And they say to you, oh, that's really easy. All you have to do is go down 1 block and then you're going to turn left and then you take yeah, then you're going to go 2 blocks and take a right. Well, they just told you, oh, it's really easy. And then they're saying 1 block and then 2 blocks to the right, 1 block to the left, 2 blocks to the right, but their whole body language. The eyes are kind of squinting, they're looking away, their voice is hesitating. I know when I've stopped and I've asked someone for directions, if I get that kind of an answer, I'm going, I don't think I trust those
Right,
directions.
you're going to look back at your map.
I'm going to look back at my map, or I'm going to find somebody else to ask.
Right.
That's kind of an over-exaggeration of what I'm talking about, but it's still an example of where you need that seamless message, where, oh, yeah, that's easy. You just go down here, 1 block, take a left, and then go another block, or go 2 blocks, and then you know, take 2 blocks down and you go right.
Right.
That's a very simple, direct, self-assured, I know what I'm talking about. So that's one of the areas that I think is really important to consider and to factor when you are preparing, is to begin to think through these other elements. And that's the value of practicing, whether you're doing it at home in the mirror or whether you're working with someone on camera.
Okay.